I let my husband know, I let my doctor know. And, you know, when I had this event at work, everybody at work found out. Mm-hmm. So, and what we went about doing was also reducing stress. How could we reduce stress? Because stress makes the symptoms of this disease worse. Mm-hmm. So when we did have the Americans with Disabilities Act, one thing you could do was ask for an accommodation. And my accommodation was, give me extra time to chart. I don't care if you pay me or not, just give me the extra time. And then I could do my work, and then I could sit down and chart. I had plenty of time to finish, and that took away stress. And I did cut back. I used to work full-time. I cut back to part-time. But I continued to work, and I worked in a fairly challenging field. I worked medical, pediatrics, telemetry, oncology, renal. I mean, I stayed on the same floor. They just changed the patients, what kind we were taking care of. And so I guess the value of how well I did my job outweighed their concern. And the fact that I was compliant and worked at it, I mean, really worked at it. I mean, I studied this disease. I found every book I could lay my hands on and read it. I went to national conventions, and Dr. Godwin, who wrote the textbook of bipolar disorder, I met him and talked with him. And so I was looking for ways to help myself. I didn't wait for other people to come in and save the day. However, as is quite obvious from what I've said, I had a good relationship in my life. I had a stable, loving husband, and I had support people around me. And eventually, myself and 3 other women were tagged to start a support group in Mount Vernon, Washington. And so I facilitated a support group for 20 years there, and now I'm doing a support group in Anacortes. So it's a learning thing, and most of what is in this book are things that I've shared with people in support groups for years. And you know, eventually you figure out, I may not always be around to tell these stories. And so I better write this down. And so that was the impetus behind writing this book. Anybody else have a thank you, yes, I will. Yes.
How was your family receptive to, I mean, it sounds like you were sharing this before, so was the book anything new for them, or had they?
Well, the fun part about doing a book like this, when you mention people, you kind of have to clue them in that, hey, I'm writing a book and you're in it, because if they don't like what you've written, it could get sticky. And so all of my cousins, you know, my aunts and uncles had pretty well passed away at this point. I shared it with all of them. And the one cousin that was probably the one I was most worried about was the one that lived on the farm with my grandmother and all of the chaos that my father would bring to the farm. And I thought, okay, if Bob doesn't like it, this book's not going anywhere. And he gave his blessing. So the whole family, you know, they were okay with it. But if you went to them and said, is there any mental illness in your family? They'd say, no, no. It's everywhere.
Today?
Oh, some of them, if you pressed them, they probably would admit that there was. They would use me as an example. Oh yeah, we have somebody, Diana, you know. But I had aunts and my dad, you know, that obviously were mood-affected people. And my the last living uncle that I had that died just a couple years ago never would admit that there was any mental illness in the family, but it was weird. And it's been very interesting for me because I've gone on Ancestry, you know, and you find people that are your 4th cousins, okay? And I found one woman whose great-grandfather was best friends with my great-grandfather, and they fought in the Civil War together, da, 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 and her great-aunt was my great-grandmother. Okay, so I had a picture of them together next to a sod house in Kansas, and then her great grandfather Williams moved to Washington State, and here we're within 60 miles of one another now. Isn't that something?
Yeah. Wow.
And when she found out about this book, she got the book, and she instant messaged me, and she said, "I just wanted to let you know I'm bipolar too." I'd been talking to her for years, had no idea. And my sister has 2 children that are bipolar, and so she's naming this. You know, I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's not all just the Middletons then. There's William, because it is an inherited, it is a highly heritable disease. And so, and then I had another 4th cousin, Middleton, from a whole different branch of the Middleton family, and he's bipolar, and all he's got a whole raft of them. So I'm like, But 1 out of every 5 people in the world will be mentally ill in their lifetime. There is no family that doesn't have someone. No family. Not if they're honest about it. There may be people in families where families hide it and don't talk about it, but they exist. And I find it over and over whenever I do something like this, or I've gone to school of nursing after the students had worked with me on the floor, and then I would show up in their psych rotation and I'd surprise them. You know, what are you doing here, Diana? Oh, I heard you were having a guest speaker today. And then I would be the guest speaker. And it was so they could see that because you have a diagnosis doesn't mean you can't be a functional person. And every time we meet with students, there would be 2, 3, 4 of them that would come to me. Well, I think so-and-so in my family might be mentally ill, or I'm beginning to wonder about myself. It's pervasive when people finally open up and share. It's everywhere. It amazes me all the time. Yes?
Diana, I am just so impressed on how well you describe in every chapter you read the experiences that even when you were in a manic state, you seem to have the ability to express what it was like to other people. And your descriptions of the people that you're describing and the joyful moments of your relationship, I just applaud you. You've just done such a wonderful job.
Well, you know, it's when you're in school as a nurse, they teach you symptoms, right? Flight of ideas. Okay, what's flight of ideas? Well, this person's just jumping from subject and you cannot figure out what's. It wasn't until I had my own manic event that I understood why it was disjointed. They had so many thoughts going that they couldn't talk fast enough. They couldn't write fast enough. You can't imagine the onslaught in your consciousness of so many thoughts, and that's why the pressured speech. Because they're trying so hard to tell you all of these things, and some of the things that they're perceiving, they're in a highly perceptive state. They pick up on things much quicker, and there's inspiration involved. Some of these people have manic events, and they're inspired, and then when they come down out of that manic event, they can share, if they can hold on to the memory, they can share that inspiration. And Kay Redfield Jameson, has anybody ever read her book?
No, I've heard of her.
Oh, she's wonderful. She's bipolar, and she's written, she helped write the research book with Dr. Godwin, but she also wrote books about her own experience. And what was the one I'm trying to think of?
The Unquiet Mind?
Well, she wrote The Unquiet Mind, but the one that comes to mind is Trial by Fire.
Touched with Fire.
Touched by Fire, thank you, Patrick. And she talks about Virginia Woolf, and she names all of these famous authors and artists, and she does a tremendous amount of research. About that much of the book at the back is her research, all of her, you know, where she got her information, you know. So it's pretty reliable that she has pinpointed these people. And and what she says is, if we could genetically eliminate this disease, you might be throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Because these people have had inspirations and they've moved society forward with it. They suffered because they were ill. I mean, terribly. Virginia Woolf killed herself, you know. They suffered, but they gave us something out of their suffering. So, you know, there's lots of perspectives on that. I personally don't believe in the magic mentally ill. You know, like, oh, mentally ill are inspirational. Well, no, not really. But some of them very much are, yeah.
Do you think some of the healing for yourself or anybody is the acceptance part?
Oh, and you know, there's actually a symptom, and don't ask me the name of it because I can't think of it right now, but they've actually found a symptom that they think is tied into whatever's going on in the brain to begin with that causes the illness, that prevents some people from ever being able to accept that. They can't see it in themselves. They are unable to perceive it. That probably is the term that we're looking for. But then there's the other part, the shame and the fear. And what about, oh, I don't want to go see a psychiatrist because then I'm labeled and everybody knows that I'm seeing a shrink. So I'm going to go on the streets and I'm going to find some meds or alcohol or something to help control these symptoms. And then they get another disease, they have addiction. And so to me, if I can put this out there and make it more normal, to talk about it, to say it's okay that you have this issue. Yes, you can have a life if you take care of it. It's not your fault that you have it, but it is your responsibility to take care of it. So that's, you know, that's kind of what it's supposed to be. Yeah.
How long did it take you to get a proper diagnosis?
Well, that's a good question. The first diagnosis, I was first diagnosed correctly the first time. Okay? And then after I was discharged, I went for, after I was finally out, for the first year I didn't have any more manic events. And I didn't get to that part in the chapter, but I was on lithium and I got a goiter because of it. So they stopped the lithium. And then I just kind of sat there, you know, and no mania, okay? And so the psychiatrist, the outpatient psychiatrist said, you know what, I think that was a one-time thing. That's a one-off. I don't think you really are. And I'm like, good, I don't want to be bipolar. Good for me, you know? But then, you know, 10 years later, I have another major manic event. It wasn't as severe as the first one, but it was bad enough. And I decided I didn't care what anybody said to me from then on. I'm bipolar, I don't care what they tell me. Because to ignore it and pretend that it's not there, it just grows out of control. But if you acknowledge it and accept, you know, okay, this is my thing, this is the thing in my life I have to deal with, just like a diabetic has to deal with their blood sugar or a cardiac patient has to deal with their heart disease, I have to deal with this. And when we can normalize it, when we can say it all comes out of a brain, which is an organ of the body, it's not mental, and physical, it's all physical. When we can tear down the things that make people ashamed when they don't need to be ashamed. And I don't recall anybody in my family saying to me directly, oh, mental illness. I don't remember anybody saying those words, but I picked it up. I picked it up from them. I learned the shame. I learned it was shameful to have it. I learned that it should be a secret. Oh my God, don't let anybody know. Okay? So now we have to be more open and more vocal and say it out loud in real words and not just let that shame just roll from generation to generation. It's just like...
Diane, have you gone back to lithium, or are you on?
Oh, no. Lithium and I were not good friends. We had problems, Lithium and I. And the bad thing was, at that time, there was lithium and antipsychotics, and that was all. There was nothing else. Now, there's so many choices of medications. And if this mood stabilizer doesn't work, try this one over here. And so there's more knowledge. The more we learn, the better the treatment gets. And there's hope. That's what hope looks like. You know, that people can have some normalcy. Am I always normal? Well, you could ask my husband and he would say, no, she's not. Does she ever have moments when she's like ranting around the house and he gets real quiet and I look at him and go, you think I need to call my doctor? You know, so there are still those times, still a struggle. But I've learned to monitor my moods and try and catch it before it gets farther. Each time, catch it sooner. The sooner I catch it, before it gets away from me. Just the meds, or reduce the stress, or whatever I need to do. Get more sleep. By the way, sleep, key, big deal. Sleep is. And this is National Suicide Prevention Month. And I just wanted to be sure, I added this at the last minute, but I wanted to be sure that I put that out there, because you never know when somebody you love or care about is going to need that number, or you're going to need that number. Yeah.
Tomorrow they're having a walk for suicide prevention.
Good.
In Bellingham
Marvelous.
from 9 to 12.
I would be there, but I was having trouble standing here reading for a minute. Walk for me, will ya? Yes, and you know, if you have people in your life that are mentally ill, be open. Talk about it. Share it. Look for those that, you know, you can find people that you're comfortable with to share. My support group is open to family members and people with mental illness, because we learn from each other. The family members go, oh, there are other people that behave like my son, daughter, husband, wife, you know, and the people that are mentally ill go, oh, there are other family members that do this. Yeah. So we learn from each other. And support, you know, there's medication, there's your therapy, talk therapy, your psychiatrist, and there's support. If you don't have those three things, you're not going to make it. You need all of that. Yes?
I have a son that's just turned 23. He was diagnosed 4 years ago.
Okay.
And he's had 3 hospitalizations in the last 3 years because of being off the medication.
Right.
So I'm just trying to figure out how to, I guess, encourage him to educate himself, because part of him, I think there really is some lack of insight, because it reminds me of a stroke patient.
Right.
He doesn't know they've got
He
the
just
right
doesn't, he can't see it in himself. Everybody else sees it, but he can't see it.
Yes.
And that's extremely hard.
That's
And the thing you need to know is, it's not that you're not doing everything that you can do. You're, I'm sure, doing everything you can for him. And it may take time before, some people never learn. I have to tell you, some people never learn. But the majority of people, after repeat, and they're going, you know, this life of mine really sucks, because I spend most of my time in the hospital. This is no good. Then, you know, then they'll reach a point, some point, and it's usually when they're depressed. Because when they're manic, who needs you? You know what I mean? I'm happy. I can do anything. I'm God. You know what I mean? But when I'm depressed, when I'm on the edge of wanting to die every moment, then I'm vulnerable. Then I might listen. Because what drives the depression in bipolar disorder is the mania. If you control the mania, you control the depression. That's the secret there. So when he's depressed and he's, I want to die, I can't say, you know, if we could control your mania, it would help prevent these depressions. Sometimes that's how you have to approach them. Because, you know, when you're manic and you have the recipe for water and blood, and you can write on the sky, and you can spend money that you don't have, and you know what I mean? Mania is energy, boundless, no holes barred. And on the cellular level in the brain, it looks like cocaine. Okay? Mania is addictive. And that's part of the problem too. It feels good, especially if you've been depressed and suddenly you get up in this huge, like I read in that one chapter where I had been so depressed and suddenly I felt like a racehorse ready to go. Let's go. I feel energy again. Oh, wonderful. I feel wonderful. Until the consequences come along to it.
So that mania, he's on several medications and they all vilify the injection, but now that he's out of that depression, he's taken a job full-time, 12-hour days, and he wants to go to school and do his online schooling.
Sure.
At the same time.
He's feeling a little better and he wants to get back to having a life like everybody else. I want to be like everybody else. The fact is, what he has to understand is, in order to have that life you want like everybody else, you have to take it slow.
And that's
the hard part.
Right now, it's just this full-on.
Right, I want to do everything, and he could be cycling back up. I want to do everything because I have lots of energy. I have lots of ideas. That's hypomania. You're not quite into mania. That's that, people on Wall Street that wheel and deal, some of them are bipolar and they do their best wheeling and dealing when they're hypomanic. Because they get it, they're faster than everybody around them.
They are, yeah.
Tell him about me. Tell him that I had a 35-year career. But I only got it because I did what I had to do so I could keep it. And I went back to school. I went back and got my degree. It just, by the time I got done though, I wound up in the hospital with a depression. So that stress plays a huge part.
And that's what I'm seeing. It's just, the sleep kind of starts changing. And
How old is he?
he just turned 23.
Well, experience.
Yeah, that's what
And so, meanwhile, you're like,
I know.
but there is hope, Mom. There is. Okay?
He's still in the state because originally he was going to go to Spain.
Oh. You're just like, hang in there, Mom. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
My husband, you described my husband. So it was very familiar, and we kind of similar because he used to come from the nursing. He would just say, "Oh, that's what we do. That's your dad." Visiting me at the So anyway, and he died, and that was just part of the thing. And then unfortunately, that kind of went into my son, and he died too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Major depression.
Yes.
He has a major depression.
Yes.
Well, and I have to say that these illnesses are life and death. 15% of people with bipolar disorder will end their lives. So it's a life and death thing. So we need as a society to take mental illness as seriously as a heart attack, because it can kill people just like a heart attack. So thank you, everybody. You've been second to none.